access to. And so there's a lot of benefits there. It's just understanding where you sit inside the structure that one can create for you.
Mm.
The third reason,
Sorry, Jeremy, I need to stop you here again. Just
yeah,
hoping to understand. Okay. So
that's all right.
let's say just give it very simple, simplify. All right. Let's say a person $250,000 per year. So you in the trust, if you can save 20% on tax, so which means how much is it? Let's round about 20% less how much? $40,000 per year? Is that
Yeah,
right?
well, let's say that use a different example. So
Mm,
if a person earning $250,000 a year, for
mm,
argument's sake, is making $40,000 in additional revenue from investments, could
mm.
be property or shares, for argument's sake, that $40,000 in most circumstances will be taxed at 47%.
Yeah.
So in this particular case, let's argue to say it's 50. We'll say $20,000.
Okay.
For the sake of 3% between friends, no one minds. So 20 grand in tax. Where if they were to distribute that to, say, for argument's sake, a corporate beneficiary, a company, with
Got different session about it.
yeah. Now some of the cons, I always like to go on the other side of the spectrum as well. So some of the cons, Eric, around establishing trusts, around maintaining trusts, and owning properties in trusts are number one, the cost. The cost of establishing a trust can vary from deed to deed, accountant to accountant. But in normal circumstances, you're looking at fees anywhere between about 2 to 2,500, upwards of 5, 6, $7,000, depending on how good your deed is, or what type of definitions, constraints that you have with inside your deed. So quite regularly that amount will flow or float in between those balances, 2.5, roughly upwards of say 6 to 7. There's
Mm.
no one rule. It's all about the deed, and the deed determines the rules of the trust. So cost of establishment is quite high for many circumstances or many cases. Running costs, on average, accountants will charge anywhere between $700 to $800. I've seen as a minimum. Again, upwards of 2 to 3, if not 4 grand. Again, depending on how complex the trust is, what assets are inside it, and the activities involved around it.
Yeah. And also, Jeremy, I have a question for you. You mentioned about the risk, okay? Risk mitigation, like you use yourself's portfolio as example. Say, let's say you have two properties in the trust. If something goes wrong, you get sued. Sorry, no, the trust gets sued. But how often does that happen then? I think it will be really, really minimal unless you have a high risk profession.
Very rare.
Yeah.
It's very rare. Look, I've got the benefit of having quite a large number of clients
Mm,
invested in property,
mm,
so I get to see some things that not many people would ever see in their lifetime, or no investors would ever hear of. But there has been a couple of cases inside my client base where the trust has been sued, and I can give you some really good examples of it. A client had three properties with inside a trust. One property was in Queensland, and unfortunately, the balcony rail was not up to legal height. It
oh,
was an older home with some alterations, and they actually bought the property with those alterations.
mm,
Unfortunately, the tenant fell over off the balcony. Not sure of the circumstances of why they did, but they did, and the tenant actually sued the client in this case, which was the trust,
mm,
and sued the client because the balcony was not of legal height. Now, unfortunately, the public liability insurance with inside the house insurance that we pay did not kick in, didn't warrant
oh,
it to be included. Yeah, because the property was not up to what they call a legal standard, and alterations were done post the property being built. The insurance says it's like having smoke alarms in your house and not working, or having faulty wiring because you did it yourself. They won't cover negligence. And in this particular case, the insurance wiped their hands very clean, because they've said there are alterations to the property done post the build, which were not
mm,
in accordance with the building code. And therefore, the owner, in this particular case, the trust, was negligent, not rectifying the issue, and the trust was sued. For a person going to work overseas for a few years, but also sole director of a corporate trustee that manages the trust, how do you avoid losing the tax residency of the corporate trustee and ends up causing a deemed CGT event? In case there is no family members, friends to appoint or replace a director position, can a person hire an accountant or a professional service firm to be a director of a corporate trustee? Great question. The answer is yes, you can. There's many non-executive or alternate directors, accountants, lawyers.